Hello to the chicos and the chicas. Today we are going to learn a lot. A new approach to endgame learning is on the menu today. What I am going to bring you today is a position that was played twice back to back by two of my stream viewers. In fact, I set them a task, and I do think that this is one of the most instructive ways of engaging with positions and in general understanding chess, which is you provide the position and then you ask the student or students to play it out at least twice, so that they play it white-black to understand the to and fro of the toing and froing of how the position plays out, what are the corresponding plans, and so forth. Of course, if you are a learner yourself, you can do it by either setting up the position and playing it out against a lower version of the engine, or find a chess friend against whom you can play. So the position is on the board already, and I think it is best if we start with the evaluation of the position, which, by the way, I did not tell the players. So it was part of the deal to offer a position that they didn't know too much about. And if you really want to play the game, I would recommend you to pause the video now and try to evaluate it yourself before I go into what went down in these two games. So, a very brief evaluation. Black to move. I forgot to add that, and it's quite important. Although in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't change too much. The fact of the matter is, white is clearly better here, which is not necessarily an obvious evaluation to many, because a lot of people would get hung up on the double pawns and on the split pawns. However, none of them are relevant whatsoever in the grand scheme of things, because none of them are vulnerable or targetable. Therefore, they do not count as weaknesses. And the pawn chain or the pawn mass that the double pawns, the double F pawns are part of, they are actually quite mobile and flexible. So there is a lot we can do with those pawns as well. On the very positive side for white, of course, the first thing that strikes us is the two bishops, which is the greatest trump card in the position in white's hands. And additionally to that, we have got two really awesome semi-open files, courtesy of the double pawns, by the way, and also the split pawns. So the semi-open files allow us to pressure black on both wings. Overall, the engine gives a 1.5 to white, and I would more or less agree with that. So, before I get into it, our two customers, a couple of words about them. Two people who were brave enough whilst on stream with me to put their hands up and play it out, and then offered the game for analysis. Hotshot Kelly, also known as Fat Belly Matt Kelly, for some of you may remember, I have done a few videos that featured his games. In the white ranks, featuring a Chess Rapid of 2248, and the Nuts Wilver 1715 Chess Rapid. I reckon he's a little bit underrated there. There is a 500 rating gap here. Now, I know because of our previous interactions that Hotshot Kelly, who is in the white trunks, is an aggressive attacker. In fact, he will be featured in another video of mine soon, but more on that later. And so I was particularly interested about how he would play out an endgame scenario like this. So, without further ado, let's see the first game. Hotshot Kelly against Not Swilver. C5. The first move, right away a mistake. The reason why this move is a mistake, although it does look like a very thematic way to strike at the center, is because it creates a light squared diagonal weakness. Now the bishop on b5 is going to be particularly annoying, and c5 doesn't really accomplish too much. We can't really target the c3 pawn, and obviously takes is not going to accomplish again too much. White played bishop b2 in response, which I would say in its own category of an even worse move than c5 was for black. So first off the bat, and you can immediately see here that there is a level of discomfort for at least the white player, but perhaps both, for playing this out, because bishop b2 is just a really ugly move. I mean, goodness me, what is this bishop doing here? If that bishop wanted to go anywhere, that should have been bishop e3, But the most instinctive move to me by far here would have been rook b1, trying to provoke yet another pawn move, after which these diagonals, or if you will, the entire light squared color complex, is chronically weak. Now, there is no immediate way to cash in on that, so I would have just played king e2, bishop e3, and potentially a4, a5, trying to rip into the pawns, which, by the way, is another plan and strategy, and in general, a common idea that validates the concept that the pawn on a2 is not weak at all, and in fact it's an asset many a time that helps us to somehow break and bite into this beautiful pawn chain that black has. Bishop b2 on the flip side is it's total hope chess, because it's hoping that black would take on d4, and even after that the bishop on b2 is quite wonky, and 2, it completely ruins our plans in regards to putting pressure on black along the b file. Let's go. a6 was played. Strange-ish move, because black should not really be trying to expand any further on the queen side, because once again it's just going to allow white easy targets. So yeah, I don't like a6 at all. Bishop d6 followed by king e7 seems logical. I would like to provoke white now into pushing a lot of pawns onto black, because that would create this funny impression that the b2 bishop is in fact just an overfed pawn. So a6 not so great. a4 may be a case of preventing a mistake, a very common phenomenon on club level chess. So I would have probably preferred king e2, checking in with my opponent. Do you really want to play b5? Because then I'm gonna go a4, and now this really stings, because black is not ready for fighting, not developed, and the rooks are not connected. So now whatever trades are gonna go down, after that I most certainly will have access to the open A file, and that is an extremely promising scenario. So a4 is again that sort of knee-jerk reaction that opponent plays a6, they want to play b5, and we go like no, not allowed. Not quite thinking it through that, hey, they want b5, is it good for them? Well, actually no, it's quite bad, so I shouldn't stop this. On the contrary, I should try my absolute best to encourage them to do that, so that we can then bite into that pawn formation. Note again that the absence of the light squared bishop in the black camp makes this whole issue even more relevant, because I cannot cover these pawns. Like if you picture this position with the black bishop here, I push in c4, and no biggie, we are good. But because of we lack that light squared bishop, it's not gonna be so easy to hold on to that chain over there. So a4 was in that regard, I think, a bit too trigger happy. King d2, another big no-go in my eyes, just based on looks. Like, this is those types of Russian school common sense things that you know, we learned when we were very, very young kids, and we were sort of growing up partly on the Russian chess school, and part of that learning was that it's an endgame. Our bishop has a dark squared bishop, so our king will not go on a dark square, because that means that if I put it on a light square, it's never gonna get checked, therefore it's never gonna walk into any tactical trickeries, and so on. It's just one of those things that just instinctively you learn it very early on, that that's a dark square, opponent has a dark square. No. Now, like any other rules that try to, you know, create a generic rule that we should always obey, to this there are also exceptions, but right here I have no reason whatsoever why I would go to d2 and not e2. And actually we are going to get burnt almost instantly. g6, very logical, trying to develop the bishop here or here. f4, ta-da! And here comes the tragedy. Now after f5, bishop h6, we have got a very, very easy target to feast on with black, and white has blown the entire advantage that he had. Now, I really don't want to go too hard on our good friend Hotshot Skelly, but if you consider the moves that he has played so far from the position that we started with, then we must recognize that the vast majority of them were pretty bad. So bishop b2 definitely ugly. a4 was preventing a mistake from the opponent. King d2 pretty ugly, and f4 pretty ugly. So if I was his coach, we would definitely spend a lot of times on just basic endgame technique, endgame logic, who is trying to do what does good piece placement look like, and so on. Because this does not look like good piece placement. What good piece placement would have looked like would have been this bishop being here in the same concept. I'm just going to play out similar moves. Rook on the file and a4, a5. This is what good piece placement looks like. Every single piece I have has a purpose. The bishop covers d4. This bishop is ready to jump in any time we want on any of these diagonals, and the two rooks are pressuring on the queen side with the idea of a5. This is a coherent, easy to understand type of setup. If you compare that to what went down in the game, it looks like it's just the random moves one after the next. And as such, by the way, I find this extremely instructive, because I think many of you can recognize some of the mistakes that you may or may not have made in a similar vein. Knight f6 was played. I really don't like it. So here is another very basic endgame concept. Once again, every Russian schoolboy would hammer it home immediately. We have a weakness. We fix it, friends. That is not going anywhere anytime soon. And now white constantly has to babysit the f-pawn for the rest of the game. Literally. Like, there is no way that I can once just look away from this pawn, because then I will immediately land in serious trouble. Actually, I prefer black here, because now the two bishops are utterly useless. Black's bishop is beautifully aimed at the target. Rook f8 or castle will further enhance that if I push it in. The knight b6, knight d5 becomes a very, very annoying plan. All of a sudden, black is looking like $1 million. Unfortunately, we played knight f6 here with black, which, by the way, was played with the intention of knight h5, which is not too bad. But the problem here is that we forgot to fix the weakness first. And credit to Hotshot Kelly, he realized that he had serious issues, and now he lived up to the challenge, played king f3 and played f5, the only moves really to keep the ball rolling. Although I must say that black is pretty close to equality here without too many problems at all. Take on f5. I didn't really like this move because I felt like it exposed the black king a little bit too much. I don't see why we can't just jump into f4, pestering the bishops and just be annoying. I think this was the more logical way to go about life. Funnily enough, the white bishop doesn't have anywhere good to go. Bishop c2 walks into the pin. Bishop b1 looks sinfully ugly. Likewise, bishop f1. So my best maybe bishop c1, giving up the d3 bishop and grabbing the dark squared bishop. But I would say that with the bishop pair gone, now this is not really a serious winning chance for white. So ef, I didn't like ef king e7. And here we needed to take. It's a free pawn, can't be recaptured because of the pin. Yes, it's double pawns, but it's an extra pawn. And as a result of the pawn being on c5, b7 is fixed. This is a typical thought process that a lot of people don't follow. They look at dc5 and they go like, ooh, I didn't like that, it's ugly double pawns. No, not at all. Beautiful double pawns they are, because the c5 pawn blockades the b7 pawn, which means that we have got a super easy target to feast on. Bishop e4, bishop a3, rook b1, and as a matter of fact, these pawns are absolutely marvelous. Couldn't ask for better. Right? But at a first glance, if you just look at it superfluously for 4 seconds or 2, takes, yucky, isolated double pawns, they are bad. Nope, not here. So don't be afraid of the double pawns. d5 closes the position and allows black to shut down this diagonal. And again, black is kind of back in the game here. The only thing they needed to do was to find this square for the king, which would have granted safety for the king for a fair while. Unfortunately, instead, we opted to go via f6, and this was just no bueno. Now the king is way too exposed on the long diagonal, and an immediate bishop c5 or a first rook d1 followed by bishop c5, bishop d4 would have been very strong. Even rook d1, rook b1, once again, piling up on the b pawn was the way to go. This capture wasn't really required or necessary. And bishop f8 here is a brilliant defensive measure to deny this. Rook e6 check, king g7, and that was the last mistake in the game. Funnily enough, king f7 was needed in order to allow the misplaced knight to reroute here, and black is not worse here at all. Very, very instructive stuff. This is a typical case of moving on to squares which are required for the minor pieces. And so now the knight has no natural way to return into the fray, and unfortunately after bishop c5 there was nothing left in the game to play for. Bishop d4 is coming with decisive effect. King f7 was played, and like I told you, Hotshots Kelly is a guy who loves tactics. He immediately cashed in on this like a champion, won the piece, and went on to win the game. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it was just sensational coaching material. There was so much in this mini game, right? Like, they started off from a endgame scenario. They played, in essence, 20 moves, and yet I could spend an entire lesson just completely, go to town on this, analyze it in detail, finding all the misunderstanding, the false concepts, and fixing them. Now, let's have a look at the next one. Swapping colors, same position. Hotshots Kelly in the black trunks now, and he plays c5 as well. For the record, the best move for black is c6, by the way, trying to create this sturdy Slav formation. And depending on how white responds, bishop d6, king e7 is the likely follow-up. And the best policy for black here is to sit tight. In order to defend an inferior position, you don't always have to do things. If your position is compact and has no apparent weakness in it, which black doesn't, very often sitting tight, offering trades when possible, is the best policy when you are playing from behind and you're trying to reach a draw. c5 was played, rook b1 was played, a heap better move than bishop b2. b6. Now, as I told you earlier, the light squared diagonals or the light squared color complex is now chronically weak. a4, I like this. I like this. g6, logical. He wants to develop the bishop to g7. By the way, a degree of pattern recognition is very clearly at play here for both players, because both of them went with black for the c5 bishop g7 plan, which is basically a Grunfeld-esque approach to attack the center. What they both completely misunderstood about the situation is that there's no way on earth that they can meaningfully pressure d4. Because bishop b3, my pawn is covering it, and none of the black pieces have the ability to put further pressure on d4, and therefore this plan is completely faulty. a5, I liked it. It's a very common way to bite into the chain. I spoke about it earlier. Takes allows us to penetrate, game over. So our good friend Hotshot just ignored it, and I think that was the right call. Bishop e3. Again, the piece placement by white is infinitely better than what we saw in the previous game. So to some degree, actually, you can see that the ratings don't necessarily represent themselves, so to speak, on the board, because I'm far more impressed with white's play here than I was with white's play in the previous game. And again, here comes the classic failure or mistake of an energetic, aggressive, attacking player. People who have this very defined style of attack, aggro, sack, they always try to find dynamic, aggressive play, even in positions where there isn't any whatsoever to be found. And so what that almost inevitably leads to almost all the time is impulsive moves and impulsive pawn moves in particular. Because what they are looking to do is constantly trying to change the structure, blow up the position, just have action. They are basically addicted to action, friction, tension. They want just, let's have a war, let's have a fight. They don't like the maneuvery stuff. And in the pursuit of trying to find it, more often than not, they end up playing absolutely horrendous moves like this, which completely destroys this bishop. And after d takes c5, the game is almost over, because after b takes back rook b7, there is no good move to meet bishop b5 at all. It's quite amazing that black is, it's like almost +5, believe it or not, but there is nothing left to play for. Black simply lost the game on the light squares. Bishop b5, king e2, rook d1, and it's carnage. Note that every single move that I announced, bishop b5, king e2, rook d1, and we could mention rook b7 as well, all on the white squares. What made it possible was a bucket load of black back pawns, putting all pawns on black, therefore creating white colored holes all over the shop. So essentially, what brought about a completely winning position for white was black's reckless, impulsive play. What did he need to do here? Of course, king e7, connecting the rooks, and then bringing the rooks into the defense and sit tight. And that's most typically what players of the type of Hotshot Kelly, once again, who thrive on initiative, attack, action, they just can't do to save their lives. It's a chess skill like any other that you need to learn, and you need to learn to like. Because most people hate the nothingness, but sometimes that's the best you can do, and it's better to accept it than fight it. So if I was played, DC would have been instant knockout. d5 is also quite strong. This bishop is now tragically bad. King e7 was played, good. Bishop b5 was played, good. It is threatening to take and win a pawn on b6. I feel like I would have played first perhaps king e2, just to complete development and connect the rooks and take it from there. Bishop b5, and this was a terrible, terrible blunder. I don't remember if Hotshot Kelly told me that it was a mouse slip, because I remember there was a mouse slip in one of the games. I mean, you can't mouse slip from here to here, but obviously the other rook needed to go there. That was a very uncharacteristic tactical blunder. Bishop c6, immediately cashing in on it. No worries, king d6, takes. And what continues now, or what's going to begin actually now, is a remarkable case of a catastrophic failure in the department of converting a one position. And again, I'm 100% certain that I'm talking to a lot of you club level players and sometimes even above when it comes to converting an endgame like this, and we go like, I had no idea what to do. So let's discuss the what to do here. King e2, I do not mind this move at all. I would have immediately fixed the structure c4, and in order to answer your question, here is what we need to do. King e2, rook a1, rook b1, take, open a file, and penetrate. That's it. It always appears to be some really complex secret method that only titled players are privy to about converting these endgames, but actually the exact opposite is the truth. Like, common sense is the #1 guide in these positions. It's not some incredible chess skill or experience or anything like that. No, it's like, I have rooks. We have 0 open files. So what I will need to do is to put rooks on what appears to be the most likely files that I can open up, and then open them up. And ta-da, we are winning. Now, obviously, I played complete lemons with black, but the essence is this. Common sense thinking. I have rooks. I am an exchange up. Rooks need open files. Let's create open files. And here we go. So, let's see what happened. King e2, fine. b5. I quite like this. It's cheeky. It's to something. I think that was actually the mouse slip, but it's a cheeky move because it doesn't allow white quite to execute this trade plan. When I said I like it, well, not really. It's a kind of a blunder, but it doesn't make white's life particularly easy after something like king c7. Yeah, nah, I'm talking nonsense. There's no way that I could say I like this. It's just, yeah, a blunder. Let's move on. Rook b2, f5. Very logical. H4. Why? Why are we playing h4 here? I don't know. because we had penetration on the ready. And then you go like, yeah, but what then? Well, then I play rook b1. Yeah, but what then? Well, I then take this, king takes, and rook check wins. So it's not like it's penetration for penetration's sake. You always seek to accomplish something with your more active pieces. By the way, after doubling up, and let's say that black deals with that threat, it's very likely I would sack the exchange back in order to pick off another pawn, and then we have connected pass pawns, unstoppable force. Anyway, h4, I get why it was played, he wants h5, but I find it's a little bit clumsy. f4, bishop d2, fine, bishop f6, no worries, king d3. It seems to me that white is losing the thread. Like, we don't seem to follow here a crystal clear plan. Like, what plan does king d3 a part of? Because if we want to penetrate on the b file, we should play h5, provoking g5, and then just go. Rook b7, rook b1, and that's it. But I don't see how king d3 fits into any schemes or any plans. Rook c8, I'm guessing it's intended c4 check, which we cut out. Fair enough. Bishop d8. And this is the best part of the business, because now white began to panic about the two pawns on the respective sides. And that is almost always the worst reaction to do, because once again, if one of them falls, that means open files. So I would have played here h5. Now I consider g5 to be more or less forced, and then just go in. Your first tool in any endgame is activity at all cost. Maximize piece activity and ignore hanging material. And you will find that it always pays off. Thank me later. Bishop takes a5, rook a1, and black can resign. Because we are going to take this pawn, and the rooks are going to decimate. Absolutely decimate black. Now, after knight b6, although I don't see anything wrong with just retreating and then, yeah, continuing the carnage, the engine reckons even this is +6. You heard that right. Wow. I mean, it's kind of forcing win, right? Because rook b8, king b5, king c7, d6 check, and we pick off the bishop. So, actually, hardly wow. So that just demonstrates how vitally important it is to not care about hanging stuff like this, and instead try to activate your pieces as fast and as effectively as possible. What did we do instead? Rook a2. Terrible deactivation. This is one of the many that is yet to come that will make this an extremely instructive example. This is a horrid move to play, because this is the move you would want to play when they took your a5 pawn and then you went after them with an forced win. Literally, rook g1, or I don't know, bishop e1 would be a better move, because this allows black what they want to do, which is an insta-loss. Because now I'm going to take a6 and win. Instead, we defend the pawn with our most valuable piece, which is already a giant red flag. We give up the only open file, and we have zero plans right now to convert. We just completely derailed the conversion of the position. Rook b8, instant, grabbing the open file. Now black is playing really well, and for the first time with white, we hit a bit of a plateau. Now for the first time, we genuinely go like, okay, now what? And it's not so easy. I was thinking maybe we could do some rook maneuver to try to trade the rook off, which I quite like. The engine wants to pull the king back and do the same. But, yeah, now it's not so simple. Rook a1 is also good, actually. I quite like that. Rook b5. And now, of course, rook b1. Again, the moves do not correspond the least bit. Because why did we play rook a1? To play rook b1. So what do we do after rook b5? Rook b1. Why wouldn't we? Right? Rook a5, and again, take here, and game over. But once we are obsessing on, oh, I don't want to lose that pawn, it's all going to go sideways. So we played rook a1 to play rook b1, and so we play king d3. c4 check, very cute. Hotshot Kelly is trying to open up the c5 square for the knight and is trying to penetrate on b2. I quite like what he's doing here. He's still dead lost, like beyond repair dead lost. But the opponent keeps on missing and dropping the ball. Again, rook b1, trading rooks, wins the game like this. Nope, king d3, knight c5. Look, black's pieces have never been this active ever since we lost the exchange with black. As far as I'm concerned, it's tremendous success for black. And even here, black is like +5. Like, get out of the game type of dead lost. Bishop d8, rook b1. Finally, bishop takes h4, and here we missed a very, very basic tactic. Rook takes a6, and the game is over, because once again, we have got the two connected pass pawns, and this is just going to be total, absolute carnage. But that we missed, and now that's gonna prove to be quite painful. And this is where the last very, very instructive part of this game comes, which I couldn't stop marveling about. White to move. What would you play here? Be honest with yourself. What move strikes you as most logical for white? And I'm going to reveal my hand right after. So the obvious move, of course, is rook b6 check, forcing the black king further back. Let's say to king e7. And at this point, you have got as many winning moves as you like. Rook c6, bishop c3, because after 94 we have a check to get out of this. So we can take on e4, bishop b4, you name it. Like, everything that doesn't hang the rook or the bishop wins on the spot. It's really that simple. But bishop b4 perhaps is best with creating the pin, threatening rook c6, and once again the pawns are rolling in. What did we do? Rook h1. By far, again, the worst move when it comes to the Russian schoolboy endgame lesson, endgame school type of thing, because what it does is that it deactivates the rook to the largest degree. I mean, I'm being unfair because rook c1 or rook d1 would be far worse moves, because rook h1 is actually at least attacking something. But considering the fact that black wanted to play h5 and now we are forcing it, I think rook h1 is a very good candidate for the worst move on the board. And now, worse still, we are continuing the deactivation of the rook by playing rook h2 and then rook g2. Now, this is the type of thing, if you really want to learn endgame technique, this is something that I really want you to observe. This is the type of stuff that you should never even consider doing. So we spent 3 moves here to move the rook from best possible square, covering the entire b file plus the back rank, to g2, where we have got 2 legal moves. The rook fulfills 0 functions whatsoever, none. And once again, when I go with, and our winning plan is, all of a sudden we have got like, not a lot. So, and all of this was the result of some weird panic about this pawn coming in, which was never gonna happen. Once again, here, h5, and yeah, bishop takes, rook takes g6, and yeah, black resigns. That's how easy it would have been to play with an active rook, activated rook. We went passivated rook, and although white is still winning, now this would be a real concern. And since white was short on time here, the rest of the game was a marvelous example of how things can derail when we are playing badly. Know that after entirely deactivating the rook, now we are busily deactivating the king as well. So now we have nothing but passive pieces. And that is never, ever how you would want to play an endgame. h3, rook g1, knight d3. Black is playing beautiful endgame here. King e2, h2, rook h1. And here black realized that even here, by the way, black is dead lost. Knight f2 would be pretty bad on account of multiple moves. I would give first a check just to keep the king away, and then take the pawn takes, king takes, and again, the double connected passes will easily mop up. If you don't know how, I very highly recommend you to try to give it a go and win it against the engine. it's a very easy finger exercise, and if it's not one for you, you need to master that. So Hotshot Kelly instead first decided to go after this pawn, which of course was a really shaky idea inside of bishop b4 check followed by c5, but once in, well, it's like white went in for a penny, in for a pound. Now we are deactivating the bishop to the greatest degree as well. So we managed to create a scenario where out of 3 pieces, all 3 of them are more or less on the worst possible square. And all of this we did voluntarily. None of these was forced. None of it. We completely voluntarily put the rook back, pulled the rook back from best square to worst in 3 very painful moves. Then we retreated the king to utter passivity. And then we topped it off with bishop back. Knight takes c4, bishop takes, pawn takes, king f1, knight e3, and black won. Now, I feel sorry for not Swilva, of course, because you never want to lose like that. And I do know that the last 10 moves were played under severe time pressure, but nonetheless, the mistakes that we have seen committed by White here, I found so instructive that I was really, I don't know how to put it, like thanking myself and going like, coach, that was a brilliant idea for actually giving them this position to play it out. Like, I think there was so much information in these 2 games for these 2 gentlemen that could inform their learning and help them to become better players. It's immense. I coached neither of them, but as a coach, I do see the incredible value of playing out scenarios like this and learn an awful lot of them. I do hope that despite this video being rather long, guys, you also appreciated it and learned hopefully a fair bit. Please do not forget to leave a comment, chuck the like button, please smash the like button, super thank me if you can, and of course I'm going to be back with the next video soon. Thanks for watching. Cheerio. Bye.